of Glass Onion on John Lennon. So as regular listeners will know, I put out these bonus episodes every now and again, and they still involve discussion of John Lennon, but they're just not specialist episodes. Today is my second visit to the Tomorrow Never Knows podcast with Bob Wilson and Warren Brown. This was recorded 2 Sundays ago, so at the end of March, and I do actually have other episodes in the can that were recorded earlier, but this one was quite topical, so it found its way up the list and became the next episode of the podcast. Before we go to that, I do want to talk about some feedback from the last show. As I slightly self-congratulated, I was very happy with the John Lennon Best Songs podcast with Jason Barnard, and the one before it as well, which is obviously part of the same conversation where we looked at the quote-unquote worst. Had a lot of feedback, private messages, people saying they liked it, and then I invited people on social media to give me their lists of the best and worst. So I'm going to read a few of those out now. Just before that, there was a message from Under the Covers, who told me his name was John on Twitter, and he was just talking about the show in general, and he said, "What I enjoy most about the show is how conversational it is. In your show you share a great knowledge of the Beatles, but it never feels too preachy, but more conversational, which I enjoy." So thanks for that, John. So let's get some of these lists. This is Fish Pie, also on Twitter. Favourite songs: Strawberry Fields Forever, A Day in the Life, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, I Am the Walrus, Across the Universe, God, Hold On John, Give Me Some Truth, Beautiful Boy, Nobody Told Me, and Instant Karma. And then Fish Pie says, "Ask me again tomorrow and I'll give you a different list," which is a sentiment shared by myself, Jason, and lots of other people. Stephanie Sadie, who's become a very loyal listener to the show. This is solo John Lennon. Worst, Old Dirt Road, Whatever Gets You Through the Night, and Tight As. And then best, Bring on the Lucy, that's Free the People. Free the People now. I Don't Want to Face It, which we mentioned, and number 9, Dream. So I'm reading these out to see which songs perhaps reoccur and which ones are the same as Jason and I's selections. This is John Lennon Beatles, still Stephanie. Worst, Little Child, Good Morning, and Run for Your Life, which was one of Jason's choices. Best, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, Yes It Is, Cry Baby Cry. You've Got to Hide Your Love Away is one of those ones that didn't get a mention at all. As with many others that people included in their list, I suddenly thought, oh my God, Happiness is a Warm Gun, like completely. I went through the list of all the albums, so I must have seen it, but I don't know, it slipped by somehow. Anyway, Owen Ling, who has been on this show, of course. Solo worst, How Do You Sleep, Steel and Glass, One Day at a Time. Best, Out the Blue, God, Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out. And then Beatles, worst, Run for Your Life again, Dig a Pony, and It's Only Love, which was one of my choices. And the best, Walrus, Across the Universe, and Happiness is a Warm Gun. Ben Rowling, who you may have heard on other Beatles shows and who will appear on my show in the future. Best Lennon solo songs: Love, number 9, Dream, How Do You Sleep, Jealous Guy, and Instant Karma. Worst Lennon solo songs: Anything Off Sometime in New York City, smiley face. Woman is the Nigger of the World. And notice, listeners, when you say it in that context, that word is nothing to be afraid of. Depends on the context. I don't use it myself if I think it's going to offend somebody, but it's interesting how that can slip through and it's the name of a song. I just think it would be absurd to say woman is the N-word of the world, because the whole point of that song, some will know, is to say that women get treated in the same way as black people. Whatever Gets You Through the Night, which is one of Jason's choices, Bless You, and Beef Jerky. Best Lennon Beatles songs, so this is still Ben. Strawberry Fields Forever, A Day in the Life, Nowhere Man, If I Fell, I'm the Walrus. Worst Lennon Beatles songs: Wait, Run for Your Life, It's Only Love, When I Get Home, and The Continuing Story of Bungalow Bill, which could well have been in my list at some point, but for some reason when that 50th anniversary box set came out of the White Album, I just completely started to love that song. I don't know why. I think I have talked about that before. So as you can see, there's a couple. Run for Your Life and It's Only Love have occurred a few times. Strawberry Fields Forever, Day in the Life, and I Am the Walrus. I think those three would be very difficult to shake from a lot of lists. Anyway, Warren Brown and Bob Wilson also gave me their list, but they actually feature in today's conversation, so I'm not going to tell you them first. David Rainey, another loyal listener to the show, he said, Antony, an impossible task, but I'll do least favourites first, solo only, but there's nothing I really dislike. So My Mummy's Dead, Sunday Bloody Sunday, and Angela. Angela probably would have been one of my dishonourable mentions. My Mummy's Dead, I think, is remarkably effective for what it's doing, you know. Sunday Bloody Sunday I actually thought was a fairly decent protest song. So he only had 3 worst ones, and then 5 best or favourites: God, which was one of my choices, Mind Games, Nobody Told Me, Out the Blue, and Asuma Sen, I'm Sorry. And then finally, Ed Chen, who's been on this show as well, he said my list is more like favourite and least favourite rather than best and worst, and he said it also changes from minute to minute. Favourite: Woman, Cold Turkey, How, Asuma Sen, again, and Grow Old With Me, and least Utopian National Anthem. If you've never heard of that, look it up. My Mummy's Dead again, John Sinclair, which is one of Jason's choices, Woman is a Nigger of the World, and Luck of the Irish, which was one of my choices. Thanks to all those people for giving their lists. It's all good fun, isn't it? Good discussion. No right answers. So to this bonus episode now. I said on the last show actually that I wasn't going to talk about the virus, and we weren't going to talk about it in this show, but we kind of did in the end, just briefly. This is actually the first of perhaps a trilogy of more contentious shows, let's say, that make reference to the assassination of John Lennon and alternative theories to it. There's one that I actually recorded back in February, which is going to be the next show, and that will be about that specifically. The one that's coming up now is quite interesting. There's quite a lot in it. I give a little mini concert of Beatles songs at the beginning and then Dylan songs at the end. And then in the middle of that, Warren and Bob, as I said, they give me their list of best John Lennon songs. We talk about David Chapman a little bit, and then we touch on the virus more in the psychological side of it. And then we talk about Bob Dylan's new song, Murder Most Foul, and that's kind of another reason why I wanted to get this one out first, because, yeah, it's fairly topical. In fact, on the day we talked about it was, I think, the day after it came out. I think I got that right. So anyway, there's lots in this episode. Bob does express some views that I suppose some people might find contentious, controversial. I don't know whether I do or not, and perhaps I come off as being very moderate, but I express a few things as well. Basically, the two things to say about that. I mean, we defend the right to say what we like to say on our podcast. I don't think we say anything. I might say a few things about people. When I say people in general, I have worked with activists, and we used to do documentary screenings and sort of events on the streets of London. So I do have some idea of how the general public thinks. Obviously, you have to generalise because it's the general public. It's millions of people. But if I ever criticise people in general, I'm including myself in it. Perhaps I'm talking about human tendencies. My general podcast, which is upcoming and which I mentioned in this conversation, will tackle that further. But to say, as my song said, The Fool's Guide, which you might hear later on, is really saying, it's including me. I'm a fool and I'm a tool. If you know those lyrics, I talked about it with Julian Charles. That was one of the bonus episodes as well. Bonus episode 1, in fact, when I was on The Mind Renewed. You also hear that Bob has a sense of humour, and when he says something potentially controversial, there's different levels of how you interpret the word controversial, But Bob can laugh about it as well. So I think that's important when you're dealing with serious stuff. So just to reiterate, this is the first of 3, as I said, more contentious programs. And it's the last one to be recorded, but the first one to go out. So what I intended as a kind of summary of the episodes that have already gone out is now more of a kind of forerunner to them. But anyway, these things work themselves out, and the shows go out at the right time. So anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and let you listen, and I'll be back on the other side with a few words. Enjoy.
Welcome to Tomorrow Never Knows with me, Bob Wilson, and Sir Warren Brown. Today, we have back our good friend, musician, philosopher, podcaster, Antony Rotunno. He's here in the Beatles kingdom, and he will serenade the listeners as only he can, tell us the latest on his splendid podcast, and so much more. First, we must, though, say hello to our sponsor. Beatles Magazine is a publication with 370+ million visitors in all their pages, read by thousands of fans around the world every day. Beatles news is updated daily, 24 hours, audio, video, photos, interviews, contests, additional materials, and more. So follow those Beatles on Beatles Magazine, the most complete online coverage, 24 hours a day. And how many days a week, guys?
8 days a week.
8 days a week. I love it. Welcome, Antony.
Hello, how you doing, Bob and Warren? Thanks for having me back.
No problem. It's a pleasure to have you back, Anthony. Your show did great last time, and hopefully we can top it this time.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, important business first. Please tell us all about all things podcast.
Okay, yes. So my podcast, Glass Onion, on John Lennon. I mean, I've been about a year now, maybe 14 months, something like that. And this year I've been doing a bit of hustling and trying to kick things on a bit. So it's doing good numbers. I've been pumping them out more or less weekly recently. One thing I wanted to talk to you about when we get into, I guess we're going to touch on JFK and kind of dark stuff, you know, like John Lennon's assassination and stuff like that, because I've been researching that. Those shows will come out in April. They're not come out yet, but I'm kind of way ahead of myself. I've stockpiled a bunch of material and just need to get editing, but it's an amazing journey. You get in the kind of Beatles family online, and they're all very nice. I nearly managed to bring Kit O'Toole with me today, but she's dealing with not only the thing we're not going to talk about today, the thing that's in the news, and also some stuff with their mother as well. So she's not able to make it, but the two of us will come onto the show together soon. So
we look forward to that. And I just want to send a shout out to Betty, Kit's mom. We hope she's feeling better today. She's in our thoughts and prayers, and we wish her the best, and we hope Kit's okay. So she's welcome on any time, as are you.
Prayers from here, Kit. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, rumor has it you have a guitar there. What kind of guitar do you have?
That's a dirty rumor. Don't believe rumors. It's a piano that sounds like a guitar.
What kind of piano that sounds like a guitar is it?
It's a Norman piano, yeah. No, it's a Norman guitar. I think it's a Canadian make. I can't even remember because I got it in 2009. I bought it in Thailand, and it's served me very well. It's getting better every year. Getting better. See what I did then?
It's getting better every year.
Yeah. It has a nice sound. It's never let me down yet.
So does Canada sending guitars over to Thailand, is that one of their number one exports?
I don't know. No, Thailand, Bangkok was always very stocked with...
Are you allowed to say that on the air?
Well, oh yeah. No, I'm not advertising or anything, but
there you go.
No, they're very well stocked with guitars always. The best guitar makes do get exported all over the world now, don't they? But,
I would suppose so. So since you have the guitar, were you holding it as a prop, or are you planning on playing it for us today?
Well, I'm going to completely spontaneously. Haven't planned anything. That's not quite true.
I'm sticking to the story.
Anthony, don't let us down.
Don't let us down. Okay. Well, what we decided, listeners, just 3 Beatles songs. 1 John, 1 Paul, and 1 George, for equality's sake. And then towards the end, because we are going to be talking about Bob Dylan later, aren't we? I'll do some Dylan songs. So the first one is Give Me Some Truth, which is John Lennon. Like I told you, I've been researching this John Lennon assassination. I read a couple of books about his killer, and it was all very dark stuff. And I've also been reading Fred Seaman's book as well. I nearly got Fred Seaman on my show, but I wasn't able to get him. I also read a book called Nowhere Man by Robert Rosen, who was on my show. That will be out in about May. So I've been very focused on this kind of John Lennon 1980 period because it's so contentious. You know, the official story is that he'd kind of resolved most of his childhood issues and him and Yoko were deliriously happy. But then there's plenty of evidence to say that that wasn't the case. So, I mean, truth is always on my mind, to be honest. You know, I try and uncover it as much as I can, although it gets harder and harder. You know, I think John Lennon did kind of spin the truth a little bit in some interviews, but I think, that's kind of par for the course when you're trying to sell albums and things. But he was also a pretty truthful guy in a lot of other ways. So anyway, this is a song of his from the album Imagine. So here we go. Sick and tired of hearing things from uptight, short-sighted, narrow-minded hypocritics. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. Had enough of reading things by neurotic, psychotic, pig-headed politicians. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. No short-head, yellow-belly son of tricky dicky's gonna mother Hubbard soft soap me with just a pocket full of holes. It's money for dough, money for roll. Sick to death of seeing things from tight-lipped, condescended mama's little chauvinists. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. I've had enough of watching scenes of schizophrenic, egocentric, paranoid prima donnas. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. No short-head, yellow-belly son of tricky dicky's gonna mother Hubbard soft soap me with just a pocket full of holes. It's money for dough, money for roll. Sick to death of hearing things from uptight, short-sighted, narrow-minded hypocritics. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. I've had enough of reading things by neurotic, psychotic, pig-headed politicians. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. All I want is the truth. Just give me some truth. All I want is the truth. Thank you, YouTube.
Right. Great job.
Excellent.
Thanks. All right. This is kind of lighter. This is a Paul McCartney song. It's more of a kind of swinging, bam, 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 that kind of thing. Anyway, shall I do it?
I'm digging it.
All right, here we go. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I am missing, and hope that my dreams will come true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true. Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll ride home every day, and I'll send all my loving to you. All my loving I will send to you. All my loving, darling, I'll be true. All my loving, all my loving, woo, all my loving, I will send to you.
All right.
I completely forgot I was on video, and I spent the first song staring at the lyrics, even though I knew them.
Excellent.
I'm trying to look at the camera. Sorry. All right, Abbey Road. Come on,
Here
easy.
comes the sun.
Yay!
Thank God we redeemed ourselves.
This is apparently the most downloaded Beatles song on Spotify. It's aged very well because it's just very feel good, and it's perfect for now, really, because the weather is changing. Even though
in Eric Clapton's garden, and it was so
I was in
the
Eric
sun was
Clapton.
coming out after the rain. Is that what happened?
I was sagging off Apple, and I was in Eric Clapton's garden. Yeah, he liked that. He liked that kind of thing about the D chord, because if I needed someone, from Rubber Soul was around. That was on is it on the second fret? Can't even remember. Around the D shape, because you can get a lot of you can get that kind of thing, which has been used in a lot of songs. So he wrote a few songs around then. So this is Here Comes the Sun.
Go for it.
All right, so we'll do the difficult one, then I'm going to relax. Okay, here we go. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Little darling, the smiles returning to their faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Sun, 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 here it comes. 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 Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear. Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's alright. It's alright. Oh, that's a bit stressful.
A little hard there, huh?
All right, do you want a bonus then?
Yes. Sounds
okay,
great.
here we go.
You get in a groove and it's cool.
Yeah, and these ones are kind of easier, and they're just chords, and it's going to be easy. So here we go. 3 songs in one. Mean Mr. Mustard sleeps in the park, shaves in the dark, trying to save paper. Sleeps in a hole in the road, saving up to buy some clothes. Keeps a 10-bob note up his nose. Such a mean old man. Such a mean old man. His sister Pam works in the shop. She never stopped. She's a go-getter. Takes him out to look at the Queen. Only place that he's ever been. Always shouts out something obscene. Such a dirty old man. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, dirty old man. You should see Polythene Pam. She's so good looking, but she looks like a man. She could see her in Jack just in a polythene bag. You should see Polythene Pam. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Get a dose of it and jackboots and kill. She's killer diller when she's dressed to the ill. She's the kind of a girl that makes a news of the world. Yeah, she could say she was attractively built. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She came in through the bathroom window, protected by a silver spoon. But now she sucks her thumb and wanders by the banks of her own lagoon. Didn't anybody tell her? Didn't anybody see? Sunday's on the phone to Monday. Tuesday's on the phone to me. She said she'd always been a dancer. She worked at 15 clubs a day. And though she thought I knew the answer, well, I knew, but I could not say. And so I quit the police department and got myself a steady job. And though she tried her best to help me, she could steal, but she could not rob. Didn't anybody tell her? Didn't anybody see? Sunday's on the phone to Monday. Tuesday's on the phone to me. Oh, yeah.
All right. Great job.
Thank you.
Good job. Your guitar playing is top notch there, Anthony.
Thank you. I've just passed 30 years playing the guitar. I found an old picture of me playing a guitar that I borrowed off a school friend before I got my own one. And the caption on the photo says Autumn 1989. So I've just passed 30 years.
Wow. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah. It's good to see I've stuck to something, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of moving around and being flaky and not sticking to things. But that's one thing that's remained consistent. Maybe that's why I like John Lennon so much.
Right.
There's only a few things that were consistent to his life, and then everything else was changeable.
That's very true. You never knew what you were going to get from John anyway.
Absolutely. And I mean, doing this podcast, he just gets more and more compelling.
One of the geniuses of our time anyway.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm just editing now a show, which I will send to you. There's a guy who has a podcast called The Strange Brew, which is a sort of rock interviews, and he's interviewed lots of different people. We did a John Lennon best and worst 5 songs, and we got together an independent list. We did the worst songs, and I'm just editing part 2, which is the best songs. And we found that, like, as we were talking about the songs, they just, in our minds, they got better and better.
Right. Can you tell me your 5 best Lennon songs?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we kind of had a little proviso that we tried to choose ones from different parts of his career because we thought it's impossible to get 5. But my 5 were Girl from Rubber Soul. Mm-hmm. And I didn't choose In My Life because I feel like In My Life was probably a 50-50 between John and Paul. Strawberry Fields, Year Blues from the White Album, Love from the Plastic Ono Band, and then God from the Plastic Ono Band.
Oh, great choices.
And, you know, I mean, I had 20, 30, 40 possible alternatives, but I just picked those ones, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think mine changes every other day, you know, so it depends on what kind of mood I'm in.
The guy I was doing the podcast with, we made sure we didn't have the same 5, and he had Day in the Life and I Am the Walrus, and they probably would have been in my top 5 or very close.
Ah, yes.
So we had to try and choose different ones, you know.
Right.
The only things I was going to say that we said on this show that we just did is that things like Strawberry Fields and I Am the Walrus, I think the others get a lot of credit as well. Maybe especially George Martin for those scores. Mm-hmm. Maybe something that people don't know that seems obvious now, but John Lennon didn't really have anything to do with those scores. He would give like very, very vague instructions. Whereas Paul, like for example, the piccolo trumpet solo on Penny Lane, Paul would whistle the notes and George Martin would transcribe them. John would give some very, very vague instruction, like on Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. He said, I want to smell the sawdust on the floor of the circus, you know?
Right. That's why, in my opinion, George Martin is the 5th Beatle. No matter what people come up with, he was definitely the 5th Beatle.
I think personally, they would have said Neil Aspinall. But I think professionally, yes. So I would say personally Neil Aspinall, professionally George Martin.
Right. All right, Bob, you're awful quiet back there. Are you snoozing?
I'm just taking in you guys discussing Mr. Lennon.
All right. Yeah. I'm unlocking your cage now, Bulldog. You can come out and growl at us.
So, Warren, what would your 5 favorite John Lennon songs be? Not 6, not 8. What was it? What were we doing, 5 or 4?
5.
It was 5. I'd have to put God up there. You know, off the top of my head, I can't go through all of them, but I like Woman. I like a lot of his stuff off of his last album. Of course, his early music is what got me into the Beatles. His voice in a lot of their early songs was just unbelievable. So I really can't pick 5. I can pick 100 if you want me to.
Yeah, that's not. I don't think that'll cut it today. How about a number 1?
Yeah, I'd put God up there.
If I give my choices, will I be judged?
No, only by God.
I didn't pick these because someone else might say they're not technically the best or the most clever. They're the ones that have the biggest effect on me personally. I don't know if there's like a Billboard chart for that category, but here I go. My first Beatles song that I heard and it affected me was I Don't Want to Spoil the Party.
Yeah, I like that one. I like it because it's so personal. The party is the Beatles.
Right.
Well, I was about 5 years old and I heard that song and I thought the acoustic on it was really cool and it sounded sort of like Everly Brothers and I said I want to get a whole album of these guys. So since I was 5, I didn't have cash inflow, so I'd asked my mom. She got me one.
George Harrison did that brilliant country and western solo on that song as well.
I loved it. And then my second one is also it's a rocker, and it's an early rocker from my favorite album cover, Something New. And I thought it kind of captured John's image without going too far over and being too harsh. I liked I'll Cry Instead.
Oh, yeah. Again, very personal. When I had Jude, who's obviously been on your show, we came up with a short list of ones that had I in the title. I think there were 3. I'm a Loser, I'll Cry Instead, and the one that I can't remember. Oh, I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. I think there was even a 4th one, but he was very into those I songs. Very direct, you see.
Do you want to take a guess at my next one? You Can Go.
Oh, Crippled Inside. Crippled Inside.
Crippled Inside, yes. I think that's an underrated song.
I've played that one live, actually.
One of my favorite pictures I made is Crippled Inside, where John's walking from one house to another with his robe on, his head down, and he looks like he's not feeling too well. And it went great with the title of that song.
What I love about it is the juxtaposition of the jaunty rhythm and the lyrics. There's a film of him talking to Tariq Ali, actually, who was a left-wing activist. He says, I've just written a song called Crippled Inside, and he's like saying, you can go to church and sing a hymn. He sort of sings it, mocking his own song. But I love that kind of jaunty rhythm, but quite challenging lyrics.
Yes, definitely.
Good skill.
My next one is off Walls and Bridges, but it's not one of the hits.
Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out?
Yes.
Oh.
Very intuitive.
We didn't check that one, listeners.
I thought this guy was hiding depression for a lot of that time, and I think those songs ring true with an honesty and a hope. Like, in other words, this is what I feel like. I'm hurting, sort of crippled inside. The Beatles are broken up. It goes back to my mom, my dad, all this time, and I just feel crippled inside, but there's still hope somehow in that for the future. But if you ever want to release pent-up energy or painful energy, I find those songs help you.
I've never played this in my life, but I can just do a little bit if you want.
Sure.
I'm just
great.
looking at it now. I don't know what B flat plus 5 is, though, so I'm going to get stuck on that one. But nobody loves you when you're down and out. Nobody sees you when you're on cloud 9. Everybody's hustling for a buck and a dime. I'll scratch your back and you scratch mine. I've been across to the other side. Oh no. Dun, 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 dun. I've shown you everything. I got nothing to hide. But still you ask me, do I love you? What it is, what it is, what it is. All I can tell you is it's all showbiz. All I can tell you, it's all showbiz. There you go. That was a little bit.
Great job.
Very easy to play that one.
That was really good, especially impromptu. That was excellent.
Yeah.
I got another one I put in my top 5. I put I'm Losing You up there.
I like the cheap shirt version.
Oh yeah. No, that really sticks out, doesn't it? Because that album's very kind of domestic bliss and everything, and then you got this kind of angsty song there.
Yeah, I liked Mark Hudson's version of it too. That was great.
I don't know a lot of covers. I know a lot of covers of Beatles songs, but not necessarily solo.
Right.
Yeah.
Revolver TV somehow got the video to that song, and that's on YouTube also if you want to look it up. That's one of the better videos I've seen too.
Is that the one of him in the studio doing that?
I believe Yoko took that off.
Yeah.
Or blocked it or something like that. And
Do you know,
Revolver TV got a hold of it somehow and put it out there anyway.
do you know why some people think she had it taken down?
No, I don't.
Well, you know, there's a lot of discussion, as I was saying before, about John Lennon in 1980. You know, there's one version that says he was really happy and he was healthy and he wasn't taking drugs. And then there's the other version where he's kind of spends most of his time lying in bed getting stoned and he's very depressed and everything. If you look at that video, he actually looks in really bad shape. Like he's very, very thin and he looks very pale. And some people say that that's why she took it down, because it was going against the myth that he was kind of really happy and healthy. Right. Who knows, you know, I mean.
Yeah, I can imagine. John had a very unusual life, and Yoko tried to suppress some of it, but it still got out there.
I think the follow-ups album, Milk and Honey, well, it became Milk and Honey. I think if he'd brought out an album in 81, I think that would have been a lot edgier. There's a lyric that people cite. There was a song called I Don't Want to Face It, which ended up on this posthumous album. And it has a famous line, you say you want to save humanity, but it's people that you just can't stand. I feel like that's what he really thought. You know, he did like humanity as a whole, but he had trouble with people a lot of the time.
Right.
And maybe, you know, we can all identify with that.
I agree, especially in these times.
Yeah.
You were talking before about John's assassination. I think we got into the show enough where we're not just pulling her out right at the start to shock people.
Yeah.
I think we've all talked about where we were when we found out, but besides that, you know, it got me that the FBI had such voluminous files on Lennon. And I'd spoken to Gary Van Syock on the show. And, you know, he had said that they were being followed everywhere they went when John was playing with the Plastic Ono band, and that even in his apartment, the FBI had taken out an apartment, and they had the taping rails in there and were taping all of Gary's phone calls as well.
Oh, wow.
They left the apartment, they were being followed wherever they went in New York City.
They also had UFOs flying around.
UFOs over New York, and I'm not too surprised.
Yeah.
But they were right up in his building. When the Watergate hearings were on, you know, it hit me that he was like, you know, kind of looking very hippie, and he was in the audience. And, you know, being against the war is kind of one thing, but he sort of made it a vendetta to go after Nixon. And when you have 1 million people or something saying give peace a chance, and you were a Beatle, I think people notice that. So you want to pick up a little bit on the road I've been walking down here?
Yeah, it was 500,000 at the Washington Monument in November 1969 was singing Give Peace a Chance, yeah. I think from what I know of John Lennon and certain other people like Stanley Kubrick, who I'm also very interested in, and Bob Dylan, I think they all clearly knew that there was some kind of agenda that went on in the world beyond, you know, what we read on the news every day. Now I think it's a lot easier to find alternative information, you know, obviously with the internet. Obviously, it then becomes harder to find the truth in a way because it gets even more buried. There are a couple of things here and there, and he was involved with the YMCA, and there were apparently ties between the YMCA and sort of CIA and other agencies. But it was all very circumstantial, what I found. Like, he went to certain places, like the Lebanon. He was sent to these places by the YMCA, and they were supposedly CIA training grounds, but
there was nothing there but like assassin training. He was even using an audio recorder to record the war.
Yeah, he made a recording of it. You're right, yeah.
How else would he get the money to travel all these places?
Yeah, that was the other thing. I mean, the official story is that he borrowed money from his mother and I think it was his father-in-law. I can't remember, but there are some mysteries for sure. Certainly after doing the research, I wouldn't rule it out. But at the same time, I didn't find anything too concrete. I read a book by a guy called Fenton Bresler, who was actually a British barrister. And it was actually a book I'd first read when I was about 15. It was amazing. I found I had the same copy in the cupboard there somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah, and kind of got me curious, but I even had a guy who has a podcast called Those Conspiracy Guys, and he actually agreed with me. He said that there wasn't anything too concrete, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen, you know. But
Things mixed in with that. I mean, for instance, he was outside the Dakota, and a famous DJ lived near there who I spoke to. Don't want to mention their name now, but they said that they noticed him for a week rocking in the street, you know, like back and forth in a hectic way, and wondered when they were going to move this guy out. The doorman was Jose Perdomo,
yes,
who had been a Cuban exile and not just a regular foot soldier, but he was up the food chain and a pretty serious guy. And him ending up being Lennon's doorman is quite a coincidence. Strange happenstance for this guy to end up there.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I couldn't find much more about Perdomo, but yes, totally agree. I mean, there are a number of curiosities, and if you put them together, you might have something.
You know, Perdomo was linked to Frank Sturgis, who was one of the Watergate burglars. He, quote, ran with him. And for a time, they tried to say, through Sturgis, tried to say that Perdomo had died, so he couldn't be located. Does that mean he killed him? No, I'm just giving the things that are quite strange in the case or anomalies in the case. The other one being, if you look at the door that Lennon stumbled through, you can look up the actual picture of the door, and there's bullet holes in it, and it was noted by the officer Spiro, who came to the scene. It bothered him to see the extra bullet shots. The gun had 5 shots. There could only be 1 miss since Lennon was hit 4 times. And if you look around at the window and they said the bricks had been hit, it seems there may have been too many shots. And the only witness to this is a Cuban exile who ran with Frank Sturgis, who's one of the men rumored to be involved in the Kennedy assassination. And if he's a good friend of his, it's quite a set of circumstances. You know, for a guy who's a revolutionary, and if he came back to the Beatles, his public relations power would be immense if they ever got back together again, let alone with him as a solo artist. A part of any war is propaganda. Propaganda is a dissemination of information that doesn't have to be untrue, but it pushes the cause one way or another. If he got back with the Beatles, he would be front page news at will. And if he was just John Lennon, he still would have quite a powerful voice in the media. And, you know, it's an interesting play that it goes back to a Watergate burglar. These would be the people John was sitting at the Watergate hearings taunting. So it is an interesting scenario. When people dismiss it out of hand, I don't think they've thought about it enough. I did not draw a conclusion. However, there is quite a bit of strangeness there, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of how I feel. It's exactly how I felt after I read these books and stuff. And it's very curious, a bit strange. One of the ideas we had for today, actually, my idea was sort of JL and JFK. And is there any other connection that you know about, Bob?
Between Lennon and
JFK, yeah.
The biggest one would be, you know, the 3 tramps who were behind the grassy knoll and marched out and photographed. People have made a parlor game of identifying them. One is this Frank Sturgis, who I mentioned. A second was E. Howard Hunt, who was a Watergate burglar. They're alleged to be these people. Let me start.
Yes.
But Hunt had been involved in things as deep as overthrowing countries such as Guatemala, I believe helping to overthrow Iran as well, countries in South America. This guy wasn't like a nobody. Before he passed away, at first he denied involvement in this, saying he wasn't in Dallas. They proved that was a lie. He was in Dallas. He tried to say he was buying Chinese food ingredients at a store, and this ended up being an untruth, and he had sued Michael Canfield, A.J. Weberman, and their book publisher. And on appeal, they lost. He didn't win the case. It seems he was in the vicinity. His son, St. John Hunt, came forward and said, "That's my father." It's quite a thing to say about your father. Further than that, later Hunt confessed. There's a tape you can listen to before he passed away. He said that they had Johnson in the wings. The participants included David Sanchez Morales, who headed the JM Wave station in Miami, which was the highest funded CIA station in the country. Cord Meyer, who was high up the chain in the CIA, who Kennedy apparently had dalliances with his wife, Mary Meyer, who wound up shot under suspicious circumstances. And the person who was picked up in her murder was found not guilty and let go. That murder had never been solved. So the names coming from Hunt, as we said, David Sanchez Morales, Hunt himself, He also mentioned Antonio Veciana, who was a Cuban exile fighting for Alpha 66, and such people as this. He said these things on tape, and you can listen to them. Then you find Sturgis's, running mate, Perdomo, is John Lennon's doorman. So people can laugh at this, but as Chapman was waiting in the street for that week back and forth, he actually flew back to Georgia. He met with a policeman who was his friend. And you would think this guy was showing bizarre behavior in the street, according to what the radio disc jockey who lived there told me when I did an interview with them. I don't believe we included that part in the interview. We talked about it privately. So he was standing out in the crowd. He flies back to Georgia. He said there were voices in his head telling him to do it. He was fighting the voices.
Yeah.
He went back to Georgia. His friend is a policeman. And this guy's just rocking back and forth and acting quite bizarre. And yet he goes target shooting with him. Maybe that was one of the things they normally did and, way to blow off steam. But with his behavior being most erratic, it's strange that he would take him shooting, and then he gave him bullets before he left, which were, allegedly hollow point bullets.
Yeah, they explode on impact. Yeah, they're the worst.
And why would you give a man in that duress that kind of ammunition, even if they were just target shooting? Wouldn't you just take regular normal bullets and shoot at a bullseye or something?
Yeah.
So then Chapman came back to New York. He had actually gone home.
That's right.
Then had the encounter with Lennon, and Lennon was shot. It seems too many shots may have been fired. Perdomo being there is quite suspicious. And you can look at the pictures of the glass door. When he was taken into custody, Chapman, the head of the local precinct, I believe his name was Arthur Richmond. We could look in Fenton Bresler's book for that. But he said, I know what's going to be made of this, but Chapman seemed to be in a trance. And he seemed to be like one of the cases where they had hypnoprogrammed somebody. So make of that as what you will. But my dad was NYPD, and that's not the normal type of thing they would say. And the man wasn't selling a book. If you want to jump off those thoughts, I hope I didn't digress too far for you.
No, that's a lot to think about. The guy was called Dana Reeves, was one of his friends, and he was the sheriff's deputy. I suppose the counter to that, and I'm not saying that this is what I think, Chapman told Dana Reeves that he was worried about New York. And I guess perhaps like a southern guy, maybe you know better than me, in any country, people are suspicious of other parts of the country, Sure. I mean, my father is Italian, and North and South Italy are really not even the same country, to be perfectly honest, rivals. So perhaps, a southern sheriff, perhaps he told him, oh, you know what they're like in New York, I need protection. But yeah, it was definitely a little bit strange. They went out in the woods for target practice, as you said. Mark Chapman actually went to New York 3 times. I always thought it was twice. Once because he couldn't get the bullets, so he went back to Georgia, as you said. Well, I think the first time he just couldn't see John Lennon, like Perdomo, or it wasn't Perdomo, actually, it was another doorman had said John Lennon's out of the country. So twice he went to New York and returned, and then he obviously went back on the 6th of December. But Fenton Bresler had it in his book that he may have stopped off in Chicago. I can't remember what the significance of that was. Because he had an aunt or something.
Because it contradicted the official story.
Right, I see, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. There's lots of holes in that. I was telling you guys before we started recording that I'm going to start a general podcast, and I'm going to use a Bob Dylan line, life and life only. And it's going to give me a nice wide berth, to talk about sort of personal things like personal development and psychology, but also looking into these kind of things, because the problem is that I got very involved in this kind of thing a few years ago, and I actually ended up sinking into a depression after about 6 months because I went so deep. I think that's the thing you ought to be careful of. You get too murky down this rabbit hole, because the rabbit hole really is endless. Either things which can be proven or things which are very, very curious at the very least. But, you've got to take care of your health as well. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Well, it is a very rough thing to look into, definitely. Of course, we don't want to go into depression and things like that, but we were going to bring it up. So it's, if we're going to bring it up, those are the facts.
No, I want to talk about it today. What I meant was that a few years ago, I spent 6 months or so going down various rabbit holes. And I'm saying that after a period of months, I'm just saying for anyone who investigates this, it's great to do that, and try and uncover the truth. But you've got to take
later,
care of your
John
life.
Lennon came out and he said, said anybody who thinks that, I'm paraphrasing, that my father's murder was, just this lone deranged person is very naive, because the powers that be take very seriously these pacifist, quote, revolutionary types. And, he was stating plainly that he believed that there was a conspiracy in his father's murder. So that was something that I'm sure they've looked into it with the resources that they have. So I think right there, it's a tip off that at least that case, beggared more investigation.
Yeah.
Well, Chapman wasn't even a Lennon fan, was he? Didn't he buy his first album when he got to New York and had John Lennon sign it?
He was a huge Todd Rundgren fan, actually.
Right.
I don't know. I read 2 books about him, and one said that he was a big fan, and one said that he wasn't. I mean, he had Meet the Beatles, but, surely lots and lots of Americans in '64 bought Meet the Beatles. That's not really a big thing.
Right.
And basically, Mark Chapman, kind of like John Lennon and kind of like a lot of John Lennon fans, I'd probably include myself, followed John Lennon through a lot of phases of his life. So, there was drugs and then there was health. He kind of tended to go to extremes. And Mark Chapman had a long, maybe 2 years at LSD phase, but that started when he was 14, and you can imagine what a lot of LSD use is going to do to a 14-year-old. Then he kind of discovered Christianity, and that was when he apparently, again, and this is official story, turned against John Lennon. And in the prayer group, they used to say, imagine John Lennon was dead and stuff like that.
It doesn't ring believable to me because I've read statements by the people who knew him. One, he wasn't really a loner. He had many girlfriends in the past, and none of them had anything bad to say about him universally through the people that he knew. The Lennon Jesus quote, which was a long time ago, and he didn't seem to be too worried about, at that point in time, nobody remembers him being too worried about John Lennon. They made it sound like he came to New York because he said the Beatles are bigger than Jesus. It didn't really ring true. Saying, hey, this guy's a hardcore fundamentalist Christian and that thing, and he's going to go get that guy. But there didn't seem to be any of that. And even in the times he's been interviewed, he hadn't alluded to anything like that.
I think, unfortunately, Noam Chomsky said this, about 80% of the public will not investigate anything. They just turn on the news and more or less believe it. And you can play with a percentage. Some cynics would say that's 90% of the public. Some would say it's 75%, whatever. But and one of the big traits of human nature, or certainly from my observations, is that people like simple solutions. They like the Occam's razor. The simplest solution is the true one. And so what happens in any kind of, when events become media events, as basically everything becomes a media event, otherwise why would we know about it? Basically, one of the theories about Chapman is that he did it to become famous. And because that sits well with the public, and because that kind of fuels their anger sufficiently, to say that that's a simple solution. Chapman did it to become famous. That's one theory, but it's a theory that suits people for its simplicity. It suits the public. So they take that and no one wants to know anything else. The evidence that goes against that is that he was due to have the trial of the century. This guy would have been 100 times more famous, and he decided to plead guilty just before his trial. So he denied himself the trial of the century, which absolutely discounts the idea that he did it because he was famous. But Catcher in the Rye was a book that was also involved with John Hinckley Jr., who shot Ronald Reagan in 1981. That was his kind of trigger book. And, my sister read it when she was 16. I read it when I was about 16. And certainly it's very easy to identify with that book, But I certainly wouldn't rule it out that it's some sort of trigger book. Because the irony of it is that the thing that Mark Chapman connected with in Catcher in the Rye is the scene, I think it's a dream that Holden Caulfield's having, where he's in a field and he's trying to stop children going over the edge. So he's actually trying to save lives. And what I found with Mark Chapman, he's a funny mixture of dark anger, but he went to work for the YMCA. He was amazing with children. Like they said, he had an almost supernatural power with children.
Wow.
And he also, Bob will probably know this, but when he was in Hawaii, he tried to kill himself in 1978. And he went to the hospital, I think it was called Bellevue. Hope I've got that right. And they responded to him so much that he volunteered, and then they ended up giving him a job in the hospital where he'd been treated. And they said, a couple of people said that he would talk to people. He actually got this woman who hadn't spoken for 2 years because she was too depressed or she was too kind of out there. And he got her talking. Like, he had an amazing ability with people. And as Bob said, lots of people had lots of good things to say about him. And there's a very good documentary, perhaps we could link it when you put the podcast out, called The Man Who Shot John Lennon, and it's on YouTube. And it's very, very even-handed. If you're interested in this topic, that's probably a good starting point.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, thanks for that info, because I haven't seen that video.
Well, Chapman did belong to, there was a name of another Christian charity that he worked for. It was like World Vision, I believe.
World Vision, yeah, that's right.
In World Vision, I was speaking to someone. I wasn't speaking to my friend about John Lennon.
Okay.
I was speaking to my friend about things that have to do with churches and things. And he had been like a captain, I believe, and a combat action veteran in Vietnam. And he went on to work in Hollywood and produce TV shows. So he was very intelligent. He was very balanced. And as we're talking, he doesn't know at the time I was investigating some of this. And he said to me, the problem with things like World Vision? And I said, no. And he said, the problem is that they use this in operations to do things and bring people into the country of the guise of being Christians. And then when these things go wrong, it puts a bad name on the Christians. That was the one that Chapman was working for. So I said to him, wow, I said, can I bring something up? And he said, yeah, sure. So I said, well, I'm looking into this. And I said, it's really strange. This guy came through there. So I just asked him because of his experience. And again, he's highly intelligent. He's had hit TV shows and such. And he was a combat veteran in Vietnam, very respected. And I just said, is that like the type of profile, basically, of someone maybe they could monkey with and put into that? He didn't say, well, he did it or something like that. But he said, the possibilities, it certainly fits the profile of someone like that. And then you go back, if you look at the number of FBI files on Lennon, they consider him a serious threat. I mean, Strom Thurmond, Richard Nixon, Lennon showed up at the Watergate hearings. I'm sure they weren't thrilled with drug use being pushed by the Beatles at a point in time, made it very fashionable and such. And, also, like when he went on the Mike Douglas show and they had the show for a week, he brought up the Black Panthers. And, I remember kid watching it, and I wasn't like scared running out of the room, but I'm like, this is a little scary. Like, who are these people? And like Abby Hoffman and these people on the show. And I'm like, I didn't say it at that age, but it dawned on me, like, somebody's got to be watching this. He can't be winning any fans. And after what he had done, to try and end Nixon's presidency and end the war, and I'm not a fan of the Vietnam War. I don't want to confuse that, but Lennon was, I think, the number one with his attitude and his ability to grab a headline at will. Who is the kind of person that type of program would go after? Again, this is some speculation, but if you check the boxes on the sheet, it seems quite a few are checked.
That Mike Douglas stuff, again, that's on YouTube as well. That was quite bizarre.
On there? It was like the Black Panthers. Yeah,
there was Bobby Seale. There was, I think, either Hoffman or Rubin or both of them.
I think both,
Yeah. I mean, George Carlin was on there, but that wasn't really related to the politics. Although I think John Lennon and George Carlin would have had an interesting conversation.
Sure. But I mean, the other guys were real bona fide radicals.
Yeah, they were. I mean, the ones that leapt out, was Bobby Seale, Hoffman, and Rubin. Yeah, it was bizarre because Mike Douglas didn't seem in any way kind of alternative. Don't you think Dick Cavett would have been a better candidate for that?
I agree with you. And as you were thinking, a thought came to me, but it was kind of like for shock value. I think that's why they picked the Mike Douglas show. One, it ran for a solid week, right? Yeah. And you were going right into the living rooms of the average American family. Yeah, more so than Dick Cavett, who would be more intellectual. And it was kind of like an in-your-face way to introduce themselves. And I could only imagine if they had all these FBI files going anyway.
Yeah,
they must have had quite a field day that week when, the Black Panthers are walking out and Rubin and these guys coming out with Louis Nye from the Munsters. And then they try to say, well, Lennon, wasn't going to do anything political and things again. But they said they were planning to go to a rally in San Francisco to support Japanese workers who worked for a Japanese company in America. And the American employees who were hired were being paid more. So they were on their way to go out and protest again. So I certainly don't think that one rally would be enough to have him killed.
Yeah, he was due to go out about 2 days after he was killed. Is that the one you were talking about?
So he wasn't going to remain in seclusion and make an album every once in a while. He was coming back out into the public. And, Reagan had won. But Reagan, it's interesting to note, we could go into that another time maybe. Reagan also had been shot, but that left behind him Bush, whose other job was head of the agency.
Yeah, CIA, yeah. One other thing, I was just checking this. John Hinckley Sr., obviously the father of the guy who shot Reagan, was actually president of World Vision. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty interesting.
Got a chill when you said that.
Yeah. It's always difficult because when you go to the internet, you'll see on a website, a news agency that you haven't heard of, and they'll say John Hinckley Sr., but I just had a look on Wikipedia, and I know people are skeptical about Wikipedia, but Wikipedia tends to give the official line of things. They've included it. So, that's a pretty weird coincidence. I mean, it's akin to the fact that on the morning of 9/11, George Bush Sr. was having breakfast with the Bin Ladens.
Yeah.
Well,
with Hinckley, the Bush brother was supposed to be having lunch in a day or two with Hinckley's brother, I believe. Yeah. Then they said they didn't know them when they asked the Bush. Like, he kind of denied it, I believe, but then it came out that was planned.
Yeah. I'm going to do a couple of shows in April about Chapman, but just to say that everything comes down to psychology, and the psychology of the media and the way the public receives it and what the public choose to believe is very interesting. And generally, they like something simple, and so that fits it. And it's amazing to me that even in 2020, I'm sure you are as well, being called like a conspiracy theory.
Less and less as things go on. I just looked up as we were talking. Bush's son had dinner plans with Hinckley before shooting. Not only is the lunch between Hinckley's brother and Sweet Deal Neil Bush, so it was well documented that they were going to have lunch. So that is, to me, quite a strange thing. So you guys want to skip the virus? We're all afraid. Yeah. It hit me as this is going on. If it was done as something like that, did it have warlike repercussions? Well, it destroyed an economy. It shook the whole world, took the investigations into the FISA warrants against Trump out of the news. And then it was reducing excess population for China, which is always desirable to them. The Mueller report came out against Trump. There was no evidence there. People can get hysterical and, do backflips. There was no evidence there whatsoever. It was 2.5 years of baloney after they had already illegally used FISA wiretaps. At least 4 of them, I believe, a judge ruled skunked already. Like the man or not like the man is up to you. I'm just stating a fact. That failed. Then they tried the impeachment. That failed. Well, this one's not failing. Hopefully we come out of it, but it destroyed the stock market, which had been going in the right direction. It has everyone frightened and in their homes, worldwide. So was a purpose fulfilled? I definitely see an agenda that could have been fulfilled. Does that mean it wasn't a natural phenomenon? No. The timing of it is quite suspicious given the other things I listed. And again, if you want to cut that out of the show, you may.
The thing that I found interesting, and I was talking to a friend today, the quote-unquote conspiracy theorists who are apparently mad and crazy and paranoid, one of the things that they've been saying, for the last 10, 15 years, since there's been a kind of alternative media on the internet, which I've been a very small part of, one of the things they'll say is that not only are we in servitude, but we beg for our servitude. And the thing that leapt out was that the other day there was a lady on the news in England, and she was in tears, and she was saying, please, everybody, stay in, don't go out. And I don't doubt her sincerity and everything. But I thought it was interesting that was exactly what the conspiracy theorists were saying. We're trying to be driven apart. They, whoever they are, and I think there are
they'd be the really rich people who don't care if other people live or die.
Right. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's reptilians, but I think it's, industrialists and members of think tanks.
Only in their spirit.
Yeah, or a little bit of their brain didn't go to mammalian or primate, yes. They're industrialists, members of think tanks, etc. And I think there is a kind of agenda which is to separate society and focus on our differences. And it just hit me the other day that this is just the most perfect thing because it's an invisible enemy. It's something that we can't see. So we're completely reliant on someone telling us the time frame for it. I was listening to a guy who was talking about the news media as a fear virus, and the fear aspect is very, very important. I'm not playing down the deaths that have occurred. I mean, apparently our Prime Minister's got it.
John Barber was telling me that there was a lot of celebrities out there that are infected.
Yeah. And some people would say that some of them are being used to prop up the examples, to possibly be figureheads like Tom Hanks.
Right. Well, it's a sad fact that, if Kim Kardashian got it, it would, people would start listening.
The most interesting one to me is who spoke out against when we were going into the war.
Mm.
Who was it that spoke up against weapons of mass destruction? Ron Paul.
Oh, Ron Paul, yeah.
Ron Paul stood up and they mocked him and called him a wimp with a twitchy voice. Meanwhile, he was truthful. He got a record that went back about 30 years. A man who'd never been in scandal, a man who was mocked. Yet he was a former baseball player, I think minor league baseball player, so he wasn't a wimpy guy. Not that it would matter if he was a little wimpy. But he warned us not going into that war, and then the war is over, and it, led to great repercussions in war in other places. So I would say the gentleman had something in what he was saying was true, and he had the cojones to say it. What is he saying now? He's saying, yes, I believe there is something, and yes, people are dying, but he's saying it's possibly being overblown to cause a huge fear wave to go across the planet. So I would just give him a listen just because he's been right about it, something as important as the Iraqi war.
Yeah. The media will make fun of him for something, and then the people will pick up on that because they don't want a truth that's too uncomfortable or too different from what they find on the news. A lot of people will say they're alternative, but then you actually give them some proven information that completely changes their worldview and see how alternative they are then. They'll fight against that. That's the thing. They don't actually want freedom. Is it Easy Rider where Jack Nicholson does an amazing speech about freedom? If they were actually given freedom, in a funny way, they'd fight not to have it because most people actually do want a ruler. They do want someone to tell them what's what. They don't want to work it out for themselves. It's very interesting,
And they don't know how to work it out for themselves.
Yeah, well, you give them a pointer, but all that has to be used is conspiracy theorists. Someone will be on the news and they'll call them a conspiracy theorist, and that will be enough. For a certain number of people, that's enough. That's all they want to hear. Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. I can dismiss anything he says.
Right.
Is this the quote you were looking for? Of course, don't ever tell anybody that they're not free. Because then they're going to get real busy killing and maiming and prove to you that they are. Well, yeah, they're going to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you about individual freedom. But they see a free individual, it's going to scare them.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. And it's interesting. There are certain celebrities that I think they do know what's going on. They do know about the dark web, and they do know about the deep state. I think deep state is a much better phrase than, conspiracy. Because conspiracy is so tainted,
Intentionally, there was documents that came out in relation to the Kennedy assassination that Mark Lane found. And it said straight in the document, call the people conspiracy buffs. How friendly reviewers write, book reviews that defame this and make fun of it.
That's right.
So, labeling it that way is kind of a way to let the air out of it.
It's so easy. And the other thing, there's a psychologist that I actually follow, and he said that there's actually a process that happens in your brain where you actually filter out stuff you don't want to hear. Because we all understand, people have mortgages and families, and people have got a lot to lose. So they will actually filter out information. That's why another famous quote is that the truth doesn't actually matter. And in a funny way, it's almost true, Facts.
You're going to sing later to snap us out of this, right? So
I am. Yeah. Can we talk about Bob Dylan's new song, perhaps?
Why don't you start?
Okay. Well, I actually printed the lyrics, so I'm gonna just recite some of my favorite lyrics. Okay.
Yes.
I should say this is a 17-minute song. It's got a lot of verses and a lot of lyrics. Well, I'll give you a few lines anyway. So, It was a dark day in Dallas, November '63, a day that will live on in infamy. President Kennedy was riding high. Good day to be living and a good day to die. This is very interesting. We've already got someone here to take your place, which is obviously Lyndon Johnson. And we know that Johnson signed off to escalate the war in Vietnam. I think the day of JFK's funeral, perhaps I got that wrong, but it was around then. The day they blew out the brains of the king, thousands were watching, no one saw a thing. Very interesting. Because if you don't take anybody's testimony seriously that says it was a grassy knoll, then no one saw a thing. You know what I mean? You know, if no one pays any attention, it may as well have not happened. Greatest magic trick ever under the sun, perfectly executed, skillfully done. There's 3 bums coming all dressed in rags, which is what you were talking about, Bob. There's a party going on behind the grassy knoll. I think just that one line tells us what Dylan thinks of what happened. Shoot him while he runs, boy. Shoot him while you can. See if you can shoot the invisible man. What is the truth? Where did it go? Ask Oswald and Ruby, they ought to know. They mutilate his body and they took out his brain, which refers to the fact that the corpse was tampered with. What more could they do? They piled on the pain. For the last 50 years, they've been searching for that. Freedom, oh freedom, freedom over me. I hate to tell you, mister, but only dead men are free. That magic bullet of yours has gone to my head. I'm just a patsy like Patsy Cline, which is a terrible lyric, but he mentions the word patsy, which is, as we all know, Lee Harvey Oswald. You can watch it when he was in police custody. He said, I'm a patsy. What happened to Lee Harvey Oswald? That was convenient.
Mm-hmm.
I've blood in my eye, got blood in my ear. I'm never going to make it to the new frontier. And just a couple more. They killed him once and they killed him twice, killed him like a human sacrifice. Air Force One coming in through the gate. Johnson sworn in at 2:38. I mean, I think Kennedy was killed about 12:30, so that's 2 hours. Don't know if Dylan's got that exactly right, but you get the point.
Yep.
So there's no doubt what Dylan thinks about it, or at least he's reflecting what lots of people think about it.
Well, he was friends with Michael Canfield, who wrote Coup d'etat in America. They were very close friends, and I can't believe that they wouldn't have spoken about this. Mike and I would talk daily for a couple of years. At night, Mike had been kind of homebound with his legs, and I'd called to keep him company, and we'd talk between 1 and 2.5 hours a night. And, you know, it often went to talking about Kennedy and such, and, you know, he knew so much about it. The guy I mentioned before, Frank Sturgis, he actually went to his house and interviewed him many times, and he slipped up in one of the conversations and said to Canfield that the day after the assassination, the FBI raided his home thinking he had been a part of it, which is sort of telltale. Mike was the person who came up with that. I think he was also the person who first found out about the tramp photographs. I think he located them first.
Yeah.
Dylan's Tempest album, and all about the Book of Revelation. You know, if you talk about something religious, you can lose people immediately or whatever, or start a riot, but here we go.
Yeah.
But it's just what's really supposed to happen if you take that in Dylan's view of what that means. And it means that at some point people are being treated like chattel. It teaches that there would be a one world currency and that there would be a chip, much like you have in a credit card now.
Yeah.
So what is Dylan saying? It was something I'd often thought myself. In the song, he says, they killed him once, they killed him twice, they killed him like a human sacrifice. So in a sense, the type of Christ, was he a perfect man? No. He was trying to stop the war. He was trying to bring peace after we'd almost had the missile crisis. That day they killed him, someone said to me, son, the age of the Antichrist has just only begun. If you put that in text of Dylan's other work in Tempest, where he clearly is singing about the Book of Revelation, because it even says right in the song Tempest, he read the Book of Revelation, and it filled his cup with tears. So what is Dylan saying is in the world today? You have a world where you do have chips in almost everything. Yeah. The potential is there to number everyone. If you shut someone's chip off, they couldn't buy or sell. It says in the Bible, without this mark, you could not buy or sell. Yeah. An electronic control of the currency. They said they wanted to get rid of paper money because it would get rid of dirty money so you couldn't get the virus. You know, what would happen is all money would become electronic, and you would, at the behest of someone turning that on or off, they could shut someone's account down. So why did he release it this weekend? Well, if we want to be conspiratorial, at a time when all these other events came, Trump, who's a nationalist, that doesn't mean he doesn't like people from other countries. It means he wants a border. I'm not going to debate that. So what would happen? How would you make a global government? You would have to get rid of America. Trump went straight to the United Nations, love him or hate him, and he said straight before them in a speech, America will never, I'm paraphrasing, kneel down before a world body and give away our sovereignty. And they were laughing at him. What's happened to the guy since? You had the FISA taps on him. You had the report, which was an absolute joke. It was supposed to come with all this information. It had nothing. It took up 2.5 years of news mania. Then they went after him with this impeachment, which was less than nothing and failed miserably. They came away with nothing but name calling. I see very intelligent people who I respect, and suddenly you talk about Trump, and they can't talk in regular debate. It's got to be name calling. So if you dislike,
triggering,
just say your things and make your point. But everything is he's this, he's that, he's the other thing. Well, he wanted to save nationalism. So what does this do? It wipes out a large segment of the population, destroyed our economy, made us very vulnerable. We were, dealing quite heavily with the Chinese to issues that could potentially, if they were exacerbated, lead to war. People have been trying to start another Cold War with Russia. What did he combine with Putin to do? I know for a time with the Ukraine, they wanted to de-escalate that because the neocons wanted to go into the Ukraine. I think starting the Cold War would be completely dangerous. We've gone in and invaded the whole Middle East, which in the Bible could be called conquest. So I don't know if those things would have started yet, but if we're looking at it from that point of view, because Dylan brought it up in the song, if you have death, you have that from disease. You have pestilence, which we've had. We've had 1 billion locusts in some of these places. This is all within the last few weeks. I mean, it has my attention. And now you have this disease, that's worldwide. Yeah. At a time when nationalism had been making a stride. Is it a coincidence? Viruses happen. It's just a strange chain of events. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, and then Brennan, who'd been head of that big agency, he came out and said Trump was guilty of treason. And then when it was plain he wasn't, why would you be irresponsible enough to say something like that in the news? And Trump later said, turning the tables when it came out that he clearly wasn't guilty of treason. He said, if you say that, you could be put to death. I'm paraphrasing. So this was quite ugly business. If that was happening, who would be behind it? The left, the right, or the globalists? To me, it seems like the globalists. That's just
it's not left or right. Left or right is some kind of label. It doesn't mean much.
The left here isn't powerful enough to come out with something like, if this wasn't an accident, what just happened? It would have to be a higher level. And who was coming at Trump at first? John Brennan, of the agency. That would tell me that someone pretty deep is in there. And then last time, Hillary Clinton, who's a neocon, who's in with that type of mindset, from what I can see, had the nomination stolen from Bernie Sanders last time. And then all of a sudden they tell us Biden is winning. Like, who's voting for him? The guy's teeth are falling out, his eye is exploding, and he doesn't know what country he's in. And he's kissing his sister, calling her his wife. So I don't know. I find it strange, but you guys talk amongst yourselves.
Wow. Very, very interesting.
I can edit it for my safety.
I'm going to be hiding behind my door with it locked and a shotgun on my lap.
A guy like Dylan, when he went out and did his Christian shows, now I'm a Christian and I'll talk about it, and you could say this is what I think Christians do, and I'll give my answer. I've had, debates with people that are friendly. My friend Andy Muir is an atheist, and we have conversations. They're not nasty. I said to him, I respect the fact that you have the guts to say you don't think something like that is true. There's such repercussions behind it. It just shows me you have conviction, although I disagree with you. So we can talk about it. But what did Dylan do? He came out in 1979 with Serve Somebody, Saved, and Shot of Love, 3 overtly Christian albums. Yeah. He took more abuse for that. Could have ruined his career. Some people said, well, he went Christian because he had nothing left to write. That is evidently totally false. His career was humming along fine. It took this blip where the rock and roll establishment, flayed him, and people forgot that. He did like a 14-night or 13-night stand at the Warfield Theater, and he was given straight-up Christian tent show revival preaching. So what was he saying was happening then? It's on tape. He's saying, look, this could be the book of Revelation. What does it mean? The revealing of Christ to the world. You can call me a name and say that, if you think only you're going to heaven. No, I don't think only I'm going to heaven. I don't deserve to go to heaven. I don't think most people know what heaven really means. The only one going to heaven is Jesus. And the only way anyone would go on is because a sacrificial lamb was killed, and you joined into that. And it's a loving thing because he's opening his arms and dying for you. Now, some people might not believe that, but I'm just saying we're talking about Dylan, who clearly does. And he put a career on the line to make those statements. When he put out Tempest, it was an extension of that time. And he was saying, look, the time is now the book of Revelation timing. Now you have this virus coming across, and you have a nationalist president who's being attacked with every name in the book, every false aspersion. And then this weekend, he put the song out. And what's the line in the song that's the kicker? Well, Kennedy was killed by a conspiracy. Got it. But what's the bigger line they're not talking about? The age of the Antichrist has just only begun. What would it look like? It would look like they want one government, one payment system, all nations to start moving together into one under some kind of body. That was what he went down to the UN and said he didn't want. And Dylan is putting it out at this key moment. Why? That's probably his most controversial, bombastic, straightforward, gutsy line in any song he released ever. Because he put himself on the line with what he said is he thinks is happening now, in my opinion, with that line. Now, would you like to sing A Hard Day's Night?
Yeah.
And remember, I'm Warren Brown, and these are my thoughts. They don't necessarily.
It's all Warren Brown, yeah.
I'm just an engineer here. Bring us back down to earth here.
This should be more intense.
No, I was just saying to Bob, could be double or triple meanings, to these things, though.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, George Harrison had a line, the farther one travels, the less one knows.
There you go.
I feel like I am learning a lot, but then I'm, in a way, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Paul has said, ever learning in knowledge, but never coming to the truth.
Right, yeah.
We're like fighting like kangaroos now.
Okay, shall I do this? Yeah.
Before you sing, I got one more thing to say.
I
got blood in my eye, got blood in my ear. I'm never going to make it to the new frontier. Zapruder's film I seen night before. Seen it 33 times, maybe more. 33rd degree Freemasonry.
Oh, yeah.
He's talking about an elite. 33 times. I don't think that's a coincidence. Yeah. It's violent, it's evil, it's cruel, and it's mean. Ugliest thing you've ever seen. They killed him once and killed him twice. Killed him like a human sacrifice. The day they killed him, someone said to me, son, the age of the Antichrist has only just begun. Air Force One coming through the gate. Johnson sworn in at 2:38. Let me know when you decided to throw in the towel. It is what it is, and it's murder most foul. And on that note, my good friend, Antony Rotunno, is now going to regale us with some jaunty, lovely Bob Dylan music.
Okay, this is a song from, which album? I think it's from Freewheeling. Anyway, if I got that wrong, I apologize. Are you ready? This is Girl from the North Country. And if you're traveling in the North Country Fair, where the winds hit heavy on the borderline, remember me to the one who lives there, for she once was a true love of mine. If you go when the snowflakes storm, when the rivers freeze and summer ends, please see for me if she's a coat so warm to keep her from the howling winds. Please see if her hair hangs long, if it rolls and flows all down her breast. Please see for me if her hair's hanging long, for that's the way I remember her best. I'm wondering if she remembers me at all. Many times I've often prayed in the darkness of my night, in the brightness of my day. So if you're traveling in the North Country Fair, when the winds hit heavy on the borderline, remember me to the one who lives there. She once was a true love of mine. Played that for years. God, that was fun. And now we've got a very, very optimistic tune. Bob's not known for his optimism always, but this is from the album Nashville Skyline. This is Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You.
All right.
That's it. Throw my ticket out the window. I throw my suitcase out there too. Throw my troubles out the door. I don't need them anymore, 'cause tonight I'll be staying here with you. I should have left this town this morning, but it was more than I could do. Oh, your love comes on so strong, and I've waited all day long for tonight when I'll be staying here with you. Is it really any wonder the love the stranger might receive? You cast your spell and let it go under. I find it so difficult to leave. I can hear that whistle blowing, and I hear that station master too. If there's a poor boy on the street, you can let him have my seat, 'cause tonight I'll be staying here with you. Throw my ticket out the window. Throw my suitcase out there too. I throw my troubles out the door. I don't need them anymore, 'cause tonight I'll be staying here with you.
Good job, Anthony.
Well, this one has quite a lot of lyrics, as you can see.
Wow.
I think lyric-wise, this last song, I'm not going to play all of it. I hope you understand. It's got 58 verses. So I think this one song alone, if you just took these lyrics, you could probably spend about 6 months. You could probably spend about 6 months analyzing just this set of lyrics. So, Bob, if I said "Darkness at the Break of Noon," what song am I going to play?
Darkness at the break of noon, shadows, even the silver spoon, a handmade blade, the child's balloon, eclipses
That's
both
the one.
the sun and moon. To understand, you know too soon, there is no sense in trying.
Yeah, that's the one.
Good song.
I was telling you off air, actually, I'm going to start a podcast this year called Life and Life Only, which is the last lyric of this song.
Excellent choice.
And it's going to be a mixture of life coaching and development and psychology and conspiracy and, well, not conspiracy, alternative explanations.
I like it.
That's the phrase I use.
There you go.
Okay, I'll play a few verses of this, and we'll see how we get on. Darkness at the break of noon, shadows, even the silver spoon, the handmade blade, the child's balloon, eclipses both the sun and moon. To understand, you know too soon, there is no sense in trying. Pointed threats they bluff with scorn, suicide remarks are torn from the fool's gold mouthpiece. A hollow horn plays wasted words, proves to warn that he not busy being born is busy dying. Temptation's page flies out the door. You follow, find yourself at war. Watch waterfalls of pity roar. You feel to moan, but unlike before, you discover that you just be one more person crying. So don't fear if you hear a foreign sound to your ear. But it's alright, Ma, I'm only sighing. Advertising signs that con you into thinking you're the one that could do what's never been done, that can win what's never been won. Meantime, life outside goes on all around you. You lose yourself, you reappear. You suddenly find you got nothing to fear. Alone you stand with nobody near, when a trembling, distant voice unclear startles your sleeping ears to hear that someone thinks they really found you. A question in your nerves is lit, but you know there is no answer fit to satisfy, ensure you not to quit, to keep it in your mind and not forget that it is not he or she or them or it that you belong to. And though the masters make the rule for the wise men and the fools, I got nothing more to live up to. All right, the last three verses. Old lady judges watch people in pairs, limited in sex they dare to push fake morals, insult and stare, while money doesn't talk, it swears. Obscenity, who really cares? Propaganda all is phony. While them that defend what they cannot see, with a killer's pride, security, it blows their minds most bitterly. For them that think death's honesty won't fall upon them naturally, life sometimes must get lonely. My eyes collide head-on with stuff, graveyards, false gods I scuff at pettiness which plays so rough. Walk upside down inside handcuffs, kick my legs to crash it off, say okay, I've had enough, what else can you show me? And if my thought dreams could be seen, they'd probably put my head in a guillotine. But it's alright, Ma. It's life and life only. Thank you, thank you.
Very good, very good.
I completely forgot where I was the last few verses. Like I was into it.
That was good.
Well, it's like 90 pages long, so you did a great job.
I used to have a covers gig when I lived in Asia, you see, and when you play on your own, you have to kind of make up ways to finish the songs, you know,
Right.
when they fade out and stuff, you know. So like I was saying, another one. All right, we'll just go John Lennon because
You're a John Lennon fan.
Well, yeah, no, because I was going to say, because of my podcast. I'm going to end with a song which coincidentally is called Glass Onion. Complete coincidence. I told you about strawberry fields. You know the place where nothing is real. But here's another place you can go, where everything flows. Looking through the bent back tulips to see how the other half lives. Looking through a glass onion. I told you about the walrus and me, man. You know that we're as close as can be, man. Well, here's another clue for you all. The walrus was Paul. Camping on a cast-iron shore, yeah. Laid him down trying to make ends meet, yeah. Looking through a glass onion. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Looking through a glass onion. I told you about the fool on the hill. I tell you, man, he living there still. Well, here's another place you can be. Oh, listen to me. Fixing a hole in the ocean, trying to make a dovetail joint, yeah. Looking through a glass onion.
Good job.
All right. Thank you.
I thank you for everything. Interesting podcast. You're a great musician, and I appreciate you playing for us. That was real nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Was that what you were hoping for today? You wanted to bring up all the intense stuff. You got it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Do you want me to do the end?
Oh, yeah, please.
And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make.
and Her
Don't have a
Majesty.
Don't have a Majesty. Yeah.
we'll
Her
have.
Majesty's a pretty nice girl, but she doesn't have a lot to say. Her
Majesty's a pretty nice girl, but
she changes from day to day. Wanna tell her that I love her a lot, but I
gotta get a belly full of wine.
Her Majesty's a pretty nice girl, so they ain't gonna make her mine.
Oh yeah, they're gonna make her mine.
Bum, bum.
all right. Good job, guys.
All right, thanks very much. So there you have it, friends. Another episode in the can. If you've come this far, thanks very much for listening. I never take it for granted. And I'm continuously bowled over when I get messages from people saying, you know, the show gets me through the day. I listen to it when I should be working. Stephanie. And other messages of, you know, support and saying, oh, you know, make sure you keep this going a bit longer. And in fact, it's in terms of future episodes, it's all looking very good. I've noticed that recently I've perhaps been repeating myself a little bit, but that's kind of inevitable. You're dealing with one subject, even though he, you know, had many facets. So that's going to happen, but I'm pretty confident I can keep pumping out good material without too much repetition. So keep listening. The next one should be out within a week. It's going to be a talk with Gordon Ruchford of Those Conspiracy Guys, which is a specialist podcast in that area. Gordon is a well-researched guy. He doesn't take things at face value, and he sees the conspiracy genre for what it is, you know, part truth, part exaggeration, sometimes lunacy, you know, it's the whole gamut really. So there's that, and then I'll do some kind of follow-up to that because I've got a ton of notes that we didn't really cover in that episode. And finally, the music we're going to hear now won't be the normal outro music. This is a song I mentioned at the top of the show called The Fool's Guide, which somehow feels appropriate to this one. And don't forget, everybody, I'm including myself as one of the fools. I'm nothing special, I'm still one of the people, but, you know, sometimes being aware of the propaganda gives you one step, and then the next one is to actively guard against it. So those who listened to the shows before the beginning of this year, and even at the beginning of this year as well, this was actually the theme song for the show. So you'll recognise some of it at the beginning. But yeah, this is the full song. It's a bit of an epic. I consider it one of the best songs I've done in my life. And I hope you enjoy this song, and I hope you enjoyed the show today. So thanks again, and I will see you very soon. Goodbye.
People are life, are your wife, and people are grunts, back to front. And people are dreams, oh, so it seems, and I can't take them right now. I can't take them right now. Can't get out of my bed. There's a thought crime running through my head. Can't take these rules, and people are fools who believe what they read and believe what they see, believe what they see on the TV. Opinions are like iPhones, everybody's got one, and narcissists are like broken hearts. Everybody knows one. Wipe them out. Wipe them out of my mind. 'Cause I can't take them right now. I can't take them right now. Believe what you read and believe what you see. Believe what you see them the tools and they'll use them. Line them up and school them. Or give me a gun and I'll shoot them. Most people are nice, fundamentally nice, believe in left and right, believe it's wrong to fight, but they're still tools, rubbers and glue, a stain on your shoe, and I can't take them back now. Tools and they'll use them. Line them up and school them. Or give me a gun and I'll shoot them. All the schools shitting out fools who believe what they read and believe what they see. Don't believe them and don't believe me. I'm a tool. I'm your changes of mood. I'm a drug in your food. Believe what you read and believe what you see on the TV. Don't believe them and don't believe me. Get out of my head. There's a thought crime running through my head. Can't take these rules